And I'm excited about this chapter. This is how I work in the studio. It's really fun for me to give you this demonstration because this is what I'm doing almost every day during the winter months in my studio. In this particular presentation, I hope to show you step by step along the way my thinking process from start to finish. But what I've got here is just colors that I'm going to be using that are basically analogous colors. So I'm just using colors in that range right there. And what I'm going to do is just wet this paper and paint it transparently. So it'll just be a very thin layer of transparent color. And you'd say, well, why do that rather than watercolor? You know, the key is the acrylic, when used transparently, is gives you this luminous, beautiful, intense color, much more so than watercolor. And when it dries about the same intensity as when you put it down, where watercolor dries twice as light. But the key to it is that it also, once it dries, is insoluble. So it's not going to lift like watercolor. So I'm basically toning the paper. We talked about this in the previous chapter, but I'm toning it with a warm undertone that I'll be able to work from. The other question people have is that aren't you sealing the paper, because acrylic is a plastic medium. It's a polyresin base. But no, if you work transparently, it's just like the paper is a white paper that you've stained, and it holds its light fast and so on. So let's go ahead and put it on. And I put a little sketch down here. This acrylic has been allowed to dry. So this is not going to lift, you see. So I can just come into this and wet this and without the fear of the undercolor coming up. I want this wet enough because I'm working with granulation, you see, and the granulating colors, the wetter the paper is, the more it's going to allow the granulation to sink into the pockets of the paper. So I'll start with that ultramarine violet, as I mentioned, and get that on there using a very large brush. Just lay that down and see if it needs more pigment or not. You see how that's neutralizing it. Pick up some of this right along the dry area of the composition. Just let that happen. You know, the thing is, I talk about this in various parts of the series, but painting what you know is really the key. And the more you know about something, the more you're going to be able to paint it well. And what it allows you to do is to let go and not be too concerned or controlled by the subject matter. I'm just going to break through some of this and get a few little marks that I'm breaking up through here. I'm going to come in with a round brush and we'll lift right in through here. And where I lift, it should be pulling back to that orange, you see, which is that acrylic underlay. That's the fun thing, is to work back into that underlayer. So we're going to start with this gouache now and get some of the translucents and opaques to set off the transparency of the acrylic and the textural quality of the watercolor. So let's dive in. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a translucent here. Translucent meaning a cloudy veil. Coming in just a little water and lay some of that in. And remembering again that the gouache, the lights dry darker and the darks dry lighter. So we'll just push that right in through there. While it's wet, take a little water. Blur that, blend it out. drop in a little more water or white in some areas if I want to just let that happen. But I can use the same brushes that I use in watercolor because gouache is water soluble. It has the same gum arabic base that watercolor has. And so we'll just start with that.